We're hopefully going to be that, one-stop podcast where they know they're going to come on and hear real information, not just the fluffy surface chit-chat. It's actual real life scenarios and real life feelings and stories and experiences and solutions as well. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Lessons Podcast. Another week, another podcast, and I'm really, really excited for today's guest. I think today's conversation is going to be a little bit emotional, or maybe for me. I don't know about you, babe, but I'm an emotional.
I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. It's going to be a really deep, raw, honest conversation, and our podcast guest today hasn't really spoken much about it, but this topic today is something that I believe needs to be spoken about more, and I'm really excited to open up the conversation. So today we are talking with my beautiful friend. I have been friends with Greg for approximately 7 years now. We met during a yoga class, and it was like one of those friendships that as soon as we met, it was just like instant connection.
I remember you were coming back as you were feeling a bit awkward because you had this deep connection with another guy. And
it's
it was
this
like,
energy.
And it was like, you didn't know what those feelings were like.
I know. I was like, I've met this guy. He's just incredible.
Like, what? You met this guy at yoga?
Yeah. I was like, but there is this energy with him that is really special. And we've just developed such an awesome friendship. So today's topic is going to be about Greg's story, growing up being gay, sexuality, the troubles he's been through, the lessons he's learned, and his story. And I think obviously I have heard all about it, and I'm so empowered, inspired. My eyes, my heart have been so much more opened, and I just think it's something that we all need to speak about more and hopefully create a little bit more compassion in the world, a little bit more understanding. So let's get straight into it. Welcome to the podcast, Greg.
Thank you so much for having me.
Are you nervous?
Yes, very, very nervous, but that's okay.
You shouldn't be.
I think anytime you talk about something which is sensitive or really connected with your heart, then nerves are natural, but I think it's a really good sign.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we were just having a conversation downstairs, and I started to cry because I still get quite emotional and I suppose reactive when people have opinions on gay relationships, because in my mind, and I know everyone has a different opinion, due to their upbringing, due to religion, due to their situation or, experiences. And I really try to be understanding and respectful of that. But in my mind, when someone loves another human, they should not cop hate and be discriminated against or miss out on a friendship or connection because they love another human. Like, a human can love a human. That's just, it's so black and white for me. So I struggle to hear people's opinions on it when it's negative. And because I'm so close with you and I see the beautiful bond you and Kelsey have, it really makes me emotional. So I'm still going through a lot of growth to not be reactive, whereas you're in quite a different place emotionally, aren't you?
Yeah, I'd love to hear the story of, where did you grow up in Australia?
Okay, yeah, well, we can start with that.
A little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So born in 1981 in Toowoomba, which is, for those of you who aren't maybe listening from Australia or from Queensland, Toowoomba is small metropolis. Like, it's it was back then a country town. It's now a little bit more of a city, but definitely kind of country town vibe. Back in the early 80s. And from Toowoomba, that was where my mum's family was. My dad originally was from Sydney. But growing up in Toowoomba, I already had a sister. So my sister is 3 years older than me. I actually haven't asked my parents whether or not we left Toowoomba because of me. But I guess there was an element of my parents thought, let's give, Amanda and Greg a little bit more opportunity. So let's get the family and pack up. And we moved to Brisbane.
Yeah.
So I lived in Brisbane from when I was about 4 and raised in Brisbane.
Yep.
And growing up, black and white, was it hard growing up being gay? And when did you know? Yeah,
good question. So once I moved to Brisbane, then I was about 4, as I said. And honestly, it was probably about 5 or 6 that it's actually not something that there was ever a day that I woke up and said, oh, okay. But from a very early age, there was definitely attraction to like same-sex attraction, but not in a sexual way because obviously children aren't sexualized.
Yes.
You know, this is kind of pre-puberty stuff. But if I really, when I do meditations and inner child work, and if I go back that early, then girls to me were always more absolute best friends.
Yeah.
Very, very close to my mum, very, very close to my sister. And now I can look back and go, oh, yep, it's difficult because with being, whether you're gay, lesbian, transgender, bi, there's not necessarily set characteristics, but there's also a tendency for, if you're growing up as a gay boy, most of the time you'll have qualities, things like being a little bit more of a better listener, or being a bit more sensitive, or maybe being a bit more artistic. So I basically ticked every single box.
Right.
Yeah.
And have you asked your parents when they...
Yeah, we've chatted about it a little bit. It's really not a topic in my family that we need to discuss at all, because it wasn't an issue. However, I'm not sure, I haven't really spoken at length with them about whether it was an issue for them. It's just they never portrayed any fear or any issues that they had. It was never given to me.
Super accepting.
It's a lot harder if it was, wasn't it? That would have been
I think so. I think there was probably an element of they realised what a hard time I was having as it is, and so they straight away went to, okay, at the end of the day, we love this kid, so let's step back and not put our fear onto him.
So when did it become, or did it become a challenge? I mean, I'm assuming high school would be
that's it.
Yeah.
High school. Yep. I remember the first time I was ever teased was actually grade 6, and that was the first time that someone actually used. I can't remember if it was I think it was the F word actually, which I don't say it, but I think that was the first word that was used against me in a derogatory way. And it wasn't that it was so particularly shocking. It's just that was the first time. So it's kind of lodged in my mind. So that was grade 6, but it wasn't until high school that it became a absolute every single day.
Did you make it known that you were gay? You were just labelled that?
People asked me every single day. Even my mum asked me, and I said no up until I was about 17. So it was very much something that I pushed back. However, not because of family or religion. I just didn't want to be. Flat out did not want to be.
Because it was so unknown?
Yep, absolutely. I still remember when the first gay character was on TV. I was watching Dawson's Creek, and I still remember there was a gay guy, and I thought, oh, that's so strange. He's actually telling people that he's gay, But realistically, if you talk to anyone about homophobia or people who are scared of someone else, some of the time it can be because that's what they're scared of within themselves. So for me, I'm not saying that I was homophobic, but I definitely did not in any way want to be gay. I wanted to be married. I wanted to have kids.
White picket fence.
Yeah, that's it. I grew up with my mum and dad who had a beautiful marriage. I grew up with my sister who met her now husband when she was 13. Or 14. So that's kind of what I looked at as a goal for a healthy relationship. So yeah, if you'd asked me even up until 17 years old, I would have still said no and denied it. Yeah.
So did you before you quantified that you were gay, did you try being with a female and also?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I loved having a girlfriend. And
so how long was
as
the
much
longest?
as I'm happy with Kelsey right now, if Ashy and I are single one day, I tell you what, because it's great having a girlfriend. I had perhaps 2 or 3. I'm not going to go into whether they were sexual or not because it's just, it's not appropriate. But it was fun because my ex Gina, who I'm still friends with, she still says I'm one of the best boyfriends she's had. She's like, it's great. We could go shopping for hours and you never got tired.
And you're such a good listener.
I'm a good listener and all of
Present.
those good things. Yeah. But by the time I was 18, obviously there was elements of those relationships that were no longer sustainable.
So can we dive a little bit deeper? You said you blocked it away since you were approximately 17, 18 years. No mum and dad, I'm not gay. No friends, I'm not gay.
Yep.
I'm not gay, I'm not gay, I'm not gay.
Yep.
Was there a day that you woke up and you went, today I'm going to, as they say, come out, open up to the world that, yes, I am gay and I'm going to own it.
Yeah.
Because
actually,
I love me.
The reason I'm smirking, which it shouldn't be a smirky subject, but I'm just thinking back to 15-year-old Greg, 16-year-old Greg, 17-year-old Greg, you would not recognize him. I had no fashion sense. I had the worst hair. I was the quintessential straight guy. I had, a girlfriend. And interestingly enough, though, that was very much my facade because I went to quite a rough state school. So, I wanted to hang out with the cool kids. I managed to convince everyone that I was, in this relationship with a girl and yada, yada, yada. But that was also me trying to convince myself. By the time I left school, I started university, and I still remember seeing a couple of gay guys on campus, and this is in Brisbane at university, and I was shocked watching them holding hands, watching them interact, and my immediate reaction was almost to say, ew, what's that?
So it was uncomfortable for you?
Oh, beyond uncomfortable, because this is something which I had pushed down. And then to watch someone almost, they weren't necessarily flaunting it, but to watch someone just being themselves without any qualms, I could not believe it. Over that time at university, being amongst, I was doing an arts degree, so I was amongst people who were open-minded, creative, artistic. It didn't take long for me to, I guess, metaphorically come out, but not actually come out, just start living who I was.
More authentically you.
That's exactly it. I luckily never had to. People always ask me, what's your coming out story? I don't really have one because I never told my parents.
Oh, that was my next question. Yeah. When did you tell your parents? But you didn't.
No, I never did. I think it's a sign of how close my parents and I are.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think I would say that growing up, whether it was your child or one of your friends' child, it would be really great if they didn't have to.
Yeah.
The same way that kids shouldn't have to say, "Oh, Mum, I've got something to tell you. I'm straight." There doesn't need to be a reason why.
Oh, you've got such a good point there.
Yeah, and so I was really lucky that I didn't have to. My sister actually. We were driving to the Gold Coast one day. I would have been perhaps 17 or 18. And she actually just said it straight out. She said, "Hey, I know you're gay." And I went, "Oh." No one had ever said it to me before. And I just went, okay, actually, I don't think I said anything. And she said, "It's super not an issue. Mum and Dad already know, they don't care at all." And I went, okay. And then we just changed the subject, never really spoke about it again. So yeah, from then on, it was just the way that
That's incredible.
was living.
But not everyone's as lucky as you to have that.
In fact, not many people is. Look, I'll correct you on your language because I don't term it lucky. Do you know what I mean? So we have to be careful that we don't think, "Oh, I'm so lucky to have that," because realistically, luck shouldn't come into it. Does that make sense?
So what about the people? Let me dive deeper into that. What about the people, and I'm sure you've got friends where their parents disown them and they don't want to talk to them.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that whether, I'm lucky, because at the end of the day, I think my parents are lucky to have me. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's where that's coming from. What I would say is I'm in the lesser majority.
Yes.
So the majority of families, particularly in the 80s and 90s, my age group and definitely the older age group, it would be a very, very different story.
There is so many children and teenagers and adults that their parents have said, "We don't want anything to do with you. That's not allowed. That's not okay.
Yeah.
Be gone," because of their sexuality.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on, there's so many factors, because you can look at factors from religion, factors from cultural differences, and factors from politics come into it as well. There's countries still today, there's many countries where it's illegal. So there's different reasons why.
It's just not fair though in my head. This is where I've got a lot of growth to do. I know that. But in my head, it's not fair. How are they meant to cope and learn to be okay with themselves if their parents aren't even accepting them?
Yeah. There's a famous quote, I don't know who said it, but there's a quote that says, and it's something that helped me many, many times, but there's a quote that says, people end up being gay because, I'm not going to get it verbatim word for word, but it's something like, people end up being gay because they don't have, it's almost they don't have the time for children. They've got too much to give and too much to offer. And when I look at the friends that I have that are gay, they're doing some pretty amazing things in terms of people who are incredibly artistic or incredibly compassionate or working in charities. Now, I'm not saying heterosexual people aren't, but who knows why, and who knows why we were put on the planet the way we are.
Do you believe that people are born gay or they're
absolutely.
evolved to be gay?
It's actually not a belief. That's it's genetics.
Do you believe that you can evolve to be gay as well? Not born gay, but evolve?
Question.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, isn't it?
I think these days, maybe not these days, but in the future,
could you turn me, Greg?
I could give it a red hot go. We joke about it, but it's quite a serious topic, because particularly in generations to come, the rules that define whether you are gay or lesbian or bi or transgender or asexual or intersex, there's so many different, rule sets.
It's crazy now. Huh?
It's crazy, but it's also beautiful. And I think, there's a very, very famous queer or gay activist and entertainer called RuPaul. And RuPaul says you've got to you've got to be your crayon and use every crayon in the crayon box. And it's absolutely true. So there will be a day where we don't have to say I am gay or I am bi.
Yeah, it won't even be a thing.
It's not a thing. So we've built this language and we've built these words to describe people, but humans don't need to be described. And if you look back in history, you know, when there was homosexuality or when there was same-sex relationships, they weren't always given these rules and these words.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, look, it is genetics. It can also be epigenetics. That's what a lot of, you know, investigation, research, whatever you want to call it, has now shown. But we really need to be careful that we're not perpetuating this myth that it's environmental.
Yes.
You know, that it's, oh, well, I bought as my grandmother said once, oh, maybe it's because I bought him a pink tea set.
But I can imagine if, say, just to go into that a little bit deeper, if two gay men adopted a little boy and that child was born not gay, let's say, and he grew up in that environment
with two dads,
with two dads who were openly gay, and it was a loving, beautiful, you know, family, there would be. You would think that they
might be more inclined to want to go down the path that their dads have.
Absolutely
or more open
not.
to it.
No, absolutely not. Look,
okay,
no, not at all. It's you love who you love, and it's not something that can be influenced. It's not something that
I agree.
Look, put it this way: why, for me, who it took me 18 years of going through bullying every single day, if I could be influenced in any way, I would be heterosexual 100%.
To avoid all that pain.
To avoid all that pain. You know, when people say it's your choice, when people say, oh, well, you were influenced by something, you're not going to be influenced to go down the absolute hardest road. We know that.
So true.
Look at everything you guys study with Anthony Robbins or with limiting beliefs and, you know, trying to play it safe. Humans, realistically, we want to do the safest thing possible. We don't like getting outside of our comfort zone. So why would someone actually choose or be influenced to do something which is probably going to affect them negatively for years and years?
Yeah.
And it's going to be something that they're going to have to deal with every day for the rest of their lives. It doesn't make sense.
I really love the way you've explained that, and I love that question. And I hope you and our audience knows that all of our questions are with good intentions. We all want to be more open and compassionate, but it's about educating ourselves.
It is. Look, and the thing is, you guys are such awesome people as a loving couple. You're in a heterosexual relationship. You're also open-minded and you're grounded. But this can be a sensitive topic for a lot of people to even ask questions because they don't want to come across as offensive.
100%.
There are words that we shouldn't be using. There are phrases, there are pronouns, there are things these days that can be upsetting.
Yeah.
But I encourage anyone just to ask. Yeah. And if someone says something that can be taken the wrong way, you know, we can always correct you and we can say, look, just so you know, we don't call it this or we don't say that. That's okay.
It's a true fear, though. I said that to you. I said that to Steve. I said, I know that whatever I ask you, you know I'm coming from a good place to help educate and just open everyone's hearts and minds. But I was scared of that. But you quickly touched on, bullying. So with your sexuality, did that really impact your mental health?
It does sadly, it does to this day.
Yeah,
it does to this day.
Still.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single day.
Can you dive into that?
Yeah, sure. So I had the most beautiful childhood and upbringing. We all have a little bit of ups and downs, but talking to, for example, you and talking to friends and talking to my fiancée Kelsey about their upbringings in different ways, it's all different. For me, I think I had, a mum and dad who are still together to this day, a sister who I'm close with. And so up until, as I said, kind of, year 6, year 7, year 8, if you asked me if I had a problem, I wouldn't have had a problem. That came crashing down in high school. As soon as I think someone found out that I danced, which I did after school, these days, no one would even care if Taj enrolled in dancing. They'd be like, awesome. But this is before, so you think you can dance. And this is before, guys had any kind of...
before there was conversations.
Totally. So I think someone found that out, which I quickly hid and lied about. And then people didn't really know after that. And obviously there was mannerisms which I couldn't control, and there was the way I spoke and things like that. So the bullying started getting bad in about grade 8. Back then there wasn't necessarily, support groups. There wasn't a conversation about it. It wasn't something, and it's still, research is showing even today, it's still something that if someone is being bullied and they go and report it to a teacher, it can actually make the bullying worse. We're still not doing exactly what we need to do for it. But sadly for me, high school just was not a good time. Not a good time at all. It was pretty much every single day of high school, I would dread walking in the gates. And as soon as I would have to walk down a specific hallway at a specific time, I'd have to try and hide from certain people.
Was it a pack mentality or was it more individual?
It was definitely the bigger guys in school, the ones that just, you know what, these days they probably wouldn't even care. It's just the fact that they wanted to show that they were, you know, they were the big guys and they had all the power. And so they could argue and say, you know, whether or not there was a girl that was unattractive or whether there was someone that was overweight or there's that weird guy that everyone thinks gay.
Yep.
It's something that they could yell out loudly and know that it would make them feel a little bit better about themselves. Yeah. So there were definitely days where I didn't go to school. There were days where I just would hide and not want to go to school. It became very difficult to actually do my studies and very difficult to even focus on what I wanted to do. By about grade 11 or 12, it's not that it got better. I just learned that I had to almost wrap people around my finger. So I knew how to become friends. I knew how to start, you know, becoming friends with the right people who could stand up for me and protect me. And I basically just fought my way through until I could graduate and get out of it.
Started to play the game.
I did play the game. Absolutely. I knew
survival.
It kind of was.
Yep.
Yeah.
And does that serve you today in life?
No, not at all. I try and find the positive in it. And still to this day, I kind of wish that I didn't go through it. I was thinking that even driving here this morning, I thought, you know, as Ashley said, we were chatting downstairs before, I really try and put a positive spin on everything that I've been through in my life. But if I talk to myself in that inner child way, I don't think I would ever allow a child to go through what I went through. Now, my parents weren't aware of it. I didn't speak about it. So it's not like they enabled it whatsoever. They knew a little bit, but I was very careful to downplay it because I didn't want to show that I was weak and I didn't want to show that I was different. And most of all, I didn't want anyone finding out this, you know, thing that was different about me. But it was pretty horrendous, yeah.
So would you say that you were depressed all through high school?
Yep, absolutely. There wasn't really depression back then. We definitely didn't speak about it. But it was just something that I lived with. You know, I'd wake up every Monday to Friday were the days that I dreaded, and Saturday, Sunday were just the happiest days. Yeah.
Okay, so you left school and then...
Well, left school, and as I said, then I went straight into an arts degree, and it was literally yin to yang. I went from this closed-minded school. It was a low socioeconomic school. It was a school where it was only the fittest survived and only the toughest guys, you know, had any kind of success. And then I went straight into QT and I was doing an arts degree. So it was a big contrast.
I'd love to get into the dynamics of your relationship now.
Okay, sure. Yep.
We talk a lot about masculine and feminine and I usually, I mean, I don't have much experience with it, but I can see that there's usually one masculine male and one feminine male in a gay relationship.
Yep.
Which one are you?
The one thing I think, and Ashy taught me this when we first started hanging out, looking at the energy of relationships, which I hadn't studied a lot before until I started watching Tony Robbins and reading a little bit more about the human needs and why we look after people. It fluctuates and it changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It really, really does. I have so many amazing friends. Some are single and some are in couples. I have two of my closest friends are single mums, and they at times have to serve as a more masculine role in the family.
Well, no different to us, really, is it?
100%.
I mean, we go through peaks and troughs with that as well.
So in a same-sex relationship, there are times when one partner might be making more money. There might be times where one partner is sad. There might be times when one partner just doesn't feel like doing the housework.
For sure. We swap all the time, but they're in your core. You know whether you're more masculine or more feminine or where you feel best. Like I feel best when I'm feminine, but I definitely do go into masculine sometimes.
It's something that I don't know whether I can say, look, you guys know me and you know Kelsey. So at the moment, definitely I'm probably I am more of a homemaker and more of a kind of carer.
Nurturer, yeah.
But that's only within my realm and my perspective, because Kelsey is also very pedantic about some things in the home and very pedantic about how he cares for me and how he looks after me. But we show love in different ways. When you look at the love languages, he shows love by working hard and by really proving that he's worthy.
Acts of service.
Whereas I'm much more cool. I've cleaned the house and I'll make dinner and I'll make sure that, you know, the washing's done and that
Dogs
type
are fed.
of thing.
I just think this world, like it's very hard for the masculine and feminine in a relationship just be what's the word?
Black and white.
Black
I'm
and
masculine,
white.
you're feminine.
Because it's so you both have to work these days. You both.
I'll tell you what changed things for me. It was only a year or two ago when I first started looking into DeMartini, and who you've met, right?
Yeah, sure.
You're crazy.
Yeah.
When I did his values quiz, wow, that changed things for me, because then I worked out, you know, it's great when you can learn what your love languages are, but then I worked out that some of my love languages I'd actually just picked up from my mum, and they weren't even my love languages.
Yeah.
And as much as I thought, if you'd asked me, I would have said, yeah, I absolutely love cleaning. I don't. I love having a clean house, but it's not one of my values. I don't love cleaning. I was trying to prove.
So that's acts of service.
It was trying to prove love through
Right.
something that I didn't even really enjoy doing. So it's interesting that you say that. But yeah, I think they do change and they do fluctuate. At our core, I'm always going to be someone who is probably much more of a talker, much more of a listener.
Which are feminine traits.
Yep, definitely. I call them yin traits, but feminine traits.
Yeah.
It's just my way of talking. I'm definitely more touchy-feely. If you ask Kelsey about the first time that he held hands with someone who he's close to, when he first met my mum, we were walking along the beach and she was like, so Kelsey, what do you do? And she held his hand.
Aww.
And it was the cutest thing, because you just see this guy, you know, his shoulders lift up and his face opens, you know, his eyebrows lift up and he's like, why is this woman holding my hand? This is so strange. Whereas for me, you know, I still hold hands with my mum every time I see her, because it's just,
I'd love to talk about what's the pros of being in a you know, some of the funny things of being in an openly gay.
There's things, Steve, that we don't even realize are funny or quirky, and then every now and then we'll kind of say it
get
to
to
each
go
other.
shopping and like
Too.
shopping.
There's pros and
Love
cons.
that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, for number one, everyone talks about the wardrobe. They're like, are you guys the same size? And we pretty much are the same size. So it's interesting that we just have...
Do you dress the same?
Yes,
Well, there you
absolutely.
go.
But
Double
you'll
your
find that
wardrobe.
couples do. You'll find that couples do after, I mean, we've been together 8 years, and you find that you go out, whether heterosexual or same sex, couples will be wearing cargo pants and sneakers on the same day.
Yeah,
or
so
they'll both
true.
be wearing black shirts on the same
Yeah,
day.
look at us. And denim.
And yep, it happens. But it gets worse than that, because we'll get changed and then we'll walk out and we don't really notice what we're wearing until we get to the front door, and we'll just look at each other, and the first person to say you have to change then has to go change, because there'll be times when we actually have maybe 5 or 6 pairs of the exact same shoes, the exact same pants, the exact same shirts.
Yeah.
We look like we're twin boys that our mother has dressed exactly the same.
That's amazing.
So what are some of the negatives?
What's the hardest thing about
The hardest, look, it's
not so much negative, but more
yeah,
hard.
no,
Yeah.
it's challenging for some same-sex couples, and we went through a challenging period where we had to work this out, that you need to schedule in space, because when you think about it, for you guys, Ashy can go and get her nails done and hair done and spend a day with the girls. You can go and watch the footy down in Melbourne or hang out with the guys or go for a drink or whatever. Our friends are one group of friends. We don't have our girlfriends and then the guy friends. It's one group of friends. So it becomes very easy for us to spend 24 hours a day together, 7 days a week, which is not healthy in a relationship. So we have to constantly go, oh, hang on, we've been around each other a little bit too much. Let's go and do our own thing just for a minute, because otherwise...
Oh, you're so right.
Yeah, we're together all the time. We have exactly the same interests. It's not like, I go out with the girls and watch a romantic comedy, and then he goes and watches a Bruce Willis movie. Yeah, we watch the same movies. We listen to the same music.
Yeah.
We really have extremely similar likes and dislikes. So we have to actually make a point of going, cool, let's stay individuals. We don't want to turn into this meshed couple that, you know...
You're still your own person.
You have to be your own person. Yeah.
What about jealousy? Because you both are attracted to the same.
Yeah.
Are you attracted to the same men?
Yep, I guess so. But sexuality or sexual desire aside, I'm someone who can appreciate beauty in a lot of different people for different ways. And if I'm walking down the street, I'll turn around and go, oh my God, did you see her hair? As much as the same as I'll turn around and go, oh, he had great calves. For me, it's not something that I think in a sexual way. I just, jealousy, that's what the question was. I think that's something which is probably at your core. I think people will either be jealous people or
whether
they
you're
won't.
gay or not.
And it's me, 100%. Some people say it's because I'm a Scorpio, because I've got other Scorpio friends and we tend to be a little bit jealous. But yeah, Kelsey, not at all. He's a very secure person. He's quite confident in his outgoing mannerisms and who he is.
And different experiences can bring on those triggers.
Different experiences, different environment growing up, maybe. I don't know.
You're so right, though. Whether you're gay or not, you can be jealous.
And the cool thing was we both chatted about that pretty early in the relationship. And he was like, do you know what? If we're at a club and you're getting chatty with people and having a drink, you know, this is 6 or 7 years ago when we were still fresh in the relationship and we would go out for a drink or whatever. He's like, that's fine because I want to see you being your fun self and talking to people and interacting.
Doesn't want to limit your personality.
No, not at all. Yeah,
love that.
but he's definitely not a jealous person. Yeah.
And you recently just got engaged?
We did indeed. So that was a big,
huge.
Yeah, big step, much bigger than I thought. Yeah.
Who proposed to who?
Yeah, so that was me.
I vlogged it if you guys want to check it out on YouTube.
Yeah, so if you're watching it on YouTube, Ashley can put a link to the He Said Yes vlog, which was awesome. It was so nice of Ashley to film it because at least we have it there and we can go back and watch it. I never thought I would be married. After I kind of said goodbye to it when I was 17 or 18 and that white picket fence thing shattered, never in a million dreams did I think.
Well, the laws just changed too, didn't they?
They did, yeah, 2017. And that was a really challenging time. For me, I felt like watching Australia debate that, it took me straight back to high school. I was upset. I was emotional.
I'd go to acupuncture and we would just have these deepest conversations.
It was shocking. You know, I had patients coming in or yoga students or friends giving me their opinion and saying, oh, you know, it's okay, I support it. And I just felt like saying, I don't want your support. You know, it actually brought up all this defense
Everyone
in me and
had
all this
opinion, didn't they?
yucky, all this yucky stuff from my teenage years came up. But it was also incredibly healing. I'm glad that it turned out the way it did. I wish that we didn't have to go through the expensive plebiscite and, you know, go through that route that we had to take. But at the end of the day, we got there and I'm grateful we did. Kelsey is really, he was always very interested in being married. He was always very interested in having the wedding and being married. So
beautiful.
Planning and doing the engagement and the proposal was something that I had a lot of fun doing.
Have you planned the wedding?
Yeah, so we are in almost in August now and the wedding will be early next year, early 2020.
Very exciting. Do you still find yourself getting discriminated against today? Because this is a more open conversation and there is a lot more acceptance. But this day and age, are you still finding you have to deal with that?
I think anyone who goes through a lot of bullying or teasing growing up, I'm unsure as to whether you can completely erase that and move on from that 100% for the rest of your life. And it's the same as someone who's gone through significant trauma, whether you call it post-traumatic stress disorder, we would call it these days, but it is a type of that. So for example, let's think this morning I had to go to Coles and I know in my head, I know if I go to Coles at 8 o'clock in the morning, there's going to be high schoolers there because I live right near a high school. So I'm still very, very much aware of how I walk.
Really?
If they're looking at me, I double check if anyone's walking behind me. Part of me is always assuming that they're either going to laugh, point, trip me over. And it honestly,
does that happen with high schoolers?
No. To give them their credit, high schoolers these days are much cooler than they were when I was growing up.
Than them now.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's still predominantly more adults. High schoolers tend to be...
the older generation, wouldn't it be? Because it wasn't spoken about much.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's my almost irrational fear. I don't think that will go away because high school for me was so traumatic. So I see a high school uniform and I think, okay, walk on the other side of the street or, you know, don't make eye contact or don't be on your phone, hands in your pockets. Just, you know, that's kind of my probably irrational but still real fear. It's definitely adults. So Kelsey and I are very aware of our body language, how we walk. Look, not every same-sex relationship couple or gay person or lesbian or whoever will act like this. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. Some people will be much more proud and say, you know what, stuff everyone else. We're going to live our life the way we want. We're holding hands. We don't care if people look at us. And we need people like that as well because they're the pioneers. I'm not that strong. I still get really upset when people point. I still get upset when people tease. I know there were years where I didn't even like going in shopping centers and Kelsey will say to me, are they looking? Or I'll say, are they looking? We have to kind of ground ourselves and go, it's okay. We're fine. You know, my mum said to me once, Greg, they probably look at you because you're two tall, good looking guys who are very well dressed. You know, they're not necessarily looking at you going, oh, there's the gay guys. Let's go get them.
That's true. But when I asked that question, it actually sparked a thought in my head that I do believe it is more the older generation because I've even got a great auntie and her son is gay, but her sister didn't approve. And that's my great grandmother.
Yep.
And I feel like the older generation is worse. You're right. The younger generation is more accepting now.
For anyone who's interested in this topic, which I'm not going to get into, it's not really something we need to get into today, but if anyone is interested as to why, I would just jump on the internet. There's amazing YouTube videos and also some really good documents just about gay history in Australia. And it talks about it's only the last 30 or 40 years that we've had any kind of reform. And I'm talking legal and political. Up until the 80s, it was still illegal in many many states and territories in Australia. So when we're talking about those older generations, it's something that they grew up with being not only frowned upon, but actually illegal. So it's pretty amazing to think that that's how people were. Yeah, that's what their frame of mind was. It's not that long ago that it was a psychological disorder. It was something that we had to treat. It's not that long ago I think it was in Victoria that police raided a club and basically, arrested all of these guys because they were suspected of being gay. It was only in the late 70s that we had our very first Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras. And the first Mardi Gras was basically a protest saying, we're gay and we want to be seen and accepted. And police stormed it, and they were locked up for the night. They were abused, they were hit. So that was only in the late 70s. So it's only just the last couple of decades where we've gone through such a huge, tremendous change. So when we talk about the older generation, I'm not making excuses at all, but we also need to go, okay, cool.
Yes.
What's happened in the last 50, 100 years? We've come so far. We've still got a long way to go, but we're doing pretty well.
It's being more understanding, isn't it? Yeah.
What is your choices if you wanted to rear a child or raise a child?
Yeah, cool. That's interesting. So each country is different and country laws change. So, for example, America is quite progressive and quite open with programs like IVF. Australia is not yet somewhere where IVF is perhaps as common for same-sex couples as America is.
So you would choose, like IVF as in you would choose a partner.
So IVF would be the more biological, I guess, route to go, because then depending on whether you're a lesbian couple or whether you are a gay couple, you would then choose
a surrogate.
Exactly. Yep. Much the same as a straight couple would use IVF. And then of course there's fostering, which I'm highly supportive of, and also adoption as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Is it something you and Kelsey are going to do in the future? Do you know?
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Let's get them married. Get the married bit done and dusted
first. It's the same
first.
with anyone that gets married. It's like that next question is, are the kids coming?
I tell you, what's interesting about being in a gay relationship is it becomes something that you can plan for and that you can choose. And so the couples that we're friends with that are in same-sex relationships that have children, these children grow up in the most loving, perfect, happy, financially stable, beautiful homes that they literally could not want for anything more. And they grow up to be well-adjusted, incredibly giving, compassionate adults. So
I have no doubt you guys would be great parents.
Well, it's something that you have to work so hard. It's either going to be expensive or difficult, or it's something that you have to really put time and energy into creating. It's not just, whoops, we accidentally got pregnant. What are we going to do? It's, it doesn't happen like that. Yeah,
for sure. So we probably should have asked this at the start of the podcast, but I knew throughout our conversation there would be a ton of lessons. But we always like to ask our guests, overall, through your experience growing up and your stories that you've told, if there was one main lesson that you have learned alongside your journey, what would it be?
I guess to always just trust, this sounds really cliche, but to trust your heart. So to go with what feels good, not according to your mind and not according to your behaviors and not according to your triggers, but just to go with your heart. Always come from a place of love. Ellen DeGeneres, her story, again, it's on YouTube. If you look at her story of what she went through, how she was ostracized in the community, in her upbringing, her family, where she lived, and how she had to build up what is now this incredible empire. And it's based on love. Her message, which she says at every show, is just be kind to one another. And that's all we need. Whether you look different, whether you act different, whether you've got a job that someone doesn't approve of, whether you raise your child in a way that someone doesn't approve of, whatever it is, if you're different, someone is going to try and pull you down for it, because as humans, there's this tendency to pull people down for being different. But if there's one lesson, and I'm going to steal it from Ellen, it's just to come from the heart and be kind to one another. If you can just do that before anything else, then you don't really have to worry about what you say or your actions. You're not necessarily going to offend anyone or upset anyone. Just always come from the heart and be kind.
Beautiful.
That is so beautiful. Now, for anyone that would love to connect with you or get to know you more, like obviously if anyone follows me on social media, you would know that Greg is my acupuncturist and he's also my yoga teacher. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do outside
the
podcast?
Outside the podcast, my realm is the, I guess, spiritual development world. So the modalities that I love to engage in are acupuncture, Chinese medicine, yoga, meditation, and I guess personal development in any way. And so at the moment, I'm a full-time acupuncturist and I absolutely love that. I've got a clinic here on the Gold Coast. I work a lot with stress, anxiety, hormone regulation.
I would love to get you back on for another whole podcast on acupuncture.
It's
that would be
really, really fascinating,
Yeah.
awesome,
fascinating subject as well. And then my other passion, of course, is yoga. Not necessarily like the gymnastic side of yoga, but more yoga in terms of how we can connect to ourselves, how we can live an authentic life, and how we can live according to our values. So
Ashy is raving about your yoga class on Monday nights at the moment.
It is my
If I
jam.
didn't play tennis, I'd come in, but
It is the yin, relaxing type of yoga, not the workout.
it's not the workout. No.
Competitive lunging, which
No, we all have enough physicality these days, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, yoga for me is definitely learning to read, and it does come from a little bit of my upbringing as well. It's learning to listen to what your inner message is. You know, when you unroll the mat, it's almost like you're opening the book of who you are. So
Love that.
yoga should be a time to read who you are, so then you're more intentional during your daily life. It's not, for me, yoga isn't a workout.
That's beautiful. And I agree. Let's get you back on to talk about acupuncture.
Absolutely.
Mindset, balance, yin and yang energy, because I love learning from you, and I have learned and grown so much just from being your friend, which I feel super, super honored. So thank you so much for taking time away from your clinic to be here today to hopefully open everyone's hearts and minds and discuss this, because I think we need to have more open conversations.
just
and
being so open and vulnerable.
Yeah,
It's
of
been,
course.
Thank you.
Being vulnerable is scary.
Thank you so much for allowing me to have this amazing platform that you've built and you're starting to build. It's such an incredible podcast. It's such an incredible, I guess, template that you've put together for these lessons. It's really, really inspiring and really incredible. I guess the last thing that I would touch on just quickly is for anyone listening who might be a parent, who might be an auntie, an uncle, a grandparent, maybe an older brother, older sister, anyone like that who thinks, oh, what do? I think my child might be. You don't necessarily need to take action. It's not something that you have to act differently or be different. It still comes back to just be kind with your language. If it's something which you grow up with, knowing that it's an option, you know, for Taj, he will have people in his life who are in different relationships, who are different, who have different characteristics. And he knows that there's all of those amazing, unique personalities out there. So that's an option if that's where his heart goes. And it's the same with any child. So it's not necessarily something that you need to be scared of, that you need to sit down and have this really serious talk about. Not at all. Just be kind all times and you won't go wrong.
That is beautiful. It's literally making me tear up.
There's a lot of resources out there as well, particularly in Australia. There's a lot of helplines. There's a lot of community groups, focus groups that if someone is unsure of, particularly a parent, but even a guardian or an auntie and uncle, go and do a little bit of work on yourself as well. It's not necessarily about saying, oh, I think I might have a gay or a lesbian child or nephew or whatever.
Yeah.
Go and do some work yourself and learn for yourself. So then you don't have to worry. You know, it comes from our own education as well.
Is there organizations and charities that you support and you love to recommend to anyone out there who feels they need that extra help?
It does depend on where you are. So each state in Australia will have a slightly different network.
Okay.
There is some Australia-based, there's some US-based, depending on where you are. But look, rather than just give you one, I would say just get online. As soon as you put into Google, you are going to come up with some incredible charities, and it depends on where you live.
Yeah.
They're very regional. In Australia, we have maybe one or two that is more national, but I would encourage any listener just to either ask, whether it be online, ask friends, ask family, but do your own research and just don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to get to do your own research and to educate yourself.
And know that there is so much help out there, like whether it is about sexuality or racism or anything, there is so much help out there and resources and people that want to help you through any difficult time you're going through, which is really beautiful.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much once again. We will wrap up this podcast here and hopefully get you back on ASAP. Thanks for listening, guys. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Lessons Podcast. And remember, we'd love to hear from you. So please jump on over to our Lessons Podcast Insta page to tell us what you think. Don't forget to join us on the Lessons Podcast next week for another inspiring guest and fantastic life lesson. If you think you've got a lesson to share, we'd love to hear from you. Hit the link in the description box to get in touch. Bye! If you've experienced issues relating to your sexuality or know someone who is and would like some guidance or support, please contact Beyond Blue on 1300 22 4636 or visit their website www.beyondblue.org.au.